trying to get rid of my Facebook, and but I'm owner on a page, so you've helped me before.
Best practice, I think Christina will agree, is you might use make sure you're into the Facebook business side of things, because the Facebook business gives you more powers to control things. I don't know if you can own then without actually having a personal Facebook account.
I'm getting rid of the ownership. That's the whole point, is I'm getting rid of the ownership.
Well, somebody needs to own it.
Yes, that's where I'm having a problem.
Yeah. We can talk.
Thank you. Sorry, Christina.
Yes.
Well, actually, I mean, I guess that I love when questions like that happen live, because then it brings me to like, hey, maybe that might be something that churches might be dealing with, whether it's a group in their church or their church in general. One thing that David knows very well from previous experience and current, actually, because David's still available to help local churches with things like, how do I get control of my Facebook page again? Or I'm not sure if we have a Facebook group or a page or what it is, but we can't access it. So how do we do that? David's been incredibly gracious to step in and work with churches and, help them regain control, or in some instances, maybe it's, well, that needs to be decommissioned because it's way out of date, and, to start fresh, it's unique depending on what each church's situation is. And so David does not just respond with an email saying, do this, this, and this, bye, good luck. He'll actually take the time to, have a phone call or whatever that's necessary, reach out to Facebook on behalf of the church, an incredible variety of solutions. David figures it out. So we probably should share something like that in a Tuesday talk down the road. Just know that if your church is experiencing something like this, or you're looking at in the future, who does own our Facebook page? Because a lot of times it's been a really amazing layperson or your really amazing pastor that set it all up, and then the layperson is no longer there, or whatever, pastor gets moved, and now like, oh my gosh, who owns it? So best practice is always to have a few administrators. It would be use the church email address as one administrator. That doesn't have to have like a full-on church, like profile for like the office manager or whatever. Maybe it's the info at church name, blah, 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 that you create a Facebook profile for, so that account, that profile can be one of the administrators, and the church could always assign somebody else to be an administrator or an editor or whatever down the road, change it up at any point. But as an administrator, you've got kind of like the ownership access. So it's best to do that, but don't just rely on one, because what if something happens to that email account? Have a secondary one. I always recommend to add Desert Southwest Conference as one of the administrators. We're not going to go in and mess with your church account at all, unless you reach out and say, can you help us with this? Even if it's like a graphics issue, like we just can't get the right size for the header, or things have changed. Now our profile picture looks really weird. We can always step in and help out with something like that, but we would not change anything without your step-by-step approval, and then we'd go in and update it. But outside of that, we won't mess with it. Occasionally you might see for those churches that have assigned Desert Southwest Conference, or namely me in this case, Christina Dillabo, as an administrator on their account, they might see some available videos that are ready to post. That might be videos that I've uploaded into Facebook and made them available to cross-post. That means that your church can publish, let's say it's a devotional by Bishop Bob or whoever that is made specifically for church use. We'll upload it into Facebook, and then it's available in your church's Facebook admin tools to post as if it came from your church. So it wouldn't be a share from Desert Southwest Conference. It looks like it's original content from your church. So that's one of the nice things about having a connection with the conference, as in allowing the conference to be an administrator on your church's Facebook page. But I'm sure there'll be other things down the road and things may change still. You never know. Facebook keeps changing up on us. So we'll revisit that again down later. But if you have any questions about it or ideas to share, please email communications@dscumc.org to share that tidbit, and we can make that a topic for a future Tuesday talk. All right. Now, along those lines, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our church questions that I shared with you, unless you guys have something else you want to address about that particular Facebook topic. Okay. So the first question was, will the conference have the bishop's closing worship available for download for churches to use on Sunday of annual conference? And it's good news, bad news. So the bad news is, no, it's not going to be available in advance for churches to use on the Sunday of annual conference. It will be live streamed live at that time. The good news, though, is what we are going to have available for you. Well, there's previous worship services that were published that you could use at that point, and worship services coming down the pike that will be available to use on that Sunday. But the official guidance or recommendation is to plan on live streaming the annual conference Sunday worship service, which will be the ordination service. So it'll be a particularly inspiring and exciting service to share that many people in your congregations may have never, ever experienced before. Ordination service is so unlike any other service. It's just inspiring. It's always beautiful. I mean, worship's always inspiring. I don't mean to imply otherwise, but it is just a unique experience. So I'm wondering if, for you guys that are here, do you think that if you were to switch and do something like that, not, okay, our church service, here's what the theme is, the sermon, and here's the scripture, and da-da-da, and switching for this unique Sunday of saying, hey, we've got a special treat for you. Next month will be annual conference. And on this day, we're going to be sharing the live stream from annual conference. You get to watch the ordination service, which will have da-da-da people. What kind of stuff would you need to be able to sell that idea? Like, would you need, I'm assuming you'd need, I don't know, maybe, would you need like a list of the potential ordinands? Would you need some kind of write-up about what happens during ordination, and maybe some support articles about what it is, like the process to ordination? Do you feel called? Because there is also an event coming up from the Board of Ordained Ministry in the Desert Southwest Conference where people can attend. It's just before annual conference. And they'll attend and they'll hear from many different seminaries about financing for seminary. They'll hear from, I don't know, a bunch of different, I've attended it once to record it. And yeah, it's just a wealth of information. And if I was planning or thinking about becoming ordained, or anybody that you know that's kind of feels like they're on that path, I would highly recommend that they attend this event. It's a lot of information that could really save you a lot of money, and so save you a lot of time and a lot of work, because they guide you in step one. This is what you got to do. If you did all this other work, sorry, it might not count. You have to start here and then move on. You know, it's a lot of information. So with all that said, what could we provide for you guys to be able to, assuming that you got the green light, or maybe that's part of it. Do you need something for your pastor, like written specifically for them, to let them know, here's what's available, and it's the bishop's recommendation, and I don't know, what might you guys need?
Hi, Christina. It's Janet. I'm
Hi.
sorry I'm not showing my face today.
Okay.
I was just wondering if we could have a time. I think that's going to be critical. If it's live streamed, that will be something we'll have to plan for. And I noticed most of this group isn't clergy, so I would assume also communication with clergy, letting them know that it's available. And basically what you said, just something brief that explains what we're doing and why.
Okay. Did you know a specific time? I guess the link, right?
Yeah.
We know and why. Perfect. Okay. So I'll put that together, and I mean, the newsletter goes out today, and we don't have something written specifically for clergy about that, or anybody really. And right now the agenda is still in the works, so we don't have a set time, but I believe that it was supposed to start at 10 a.m. That's what we have right now. When we have our next sessions meeting, I will bring this up and let them know, like, we really need to iron out the ordination service. If we're recommending churches to live stream this or share the stream, we absolutely have to have way in advance at a set start time. So thank you for that, Janet. Okay. So the next question is about copyright again. I mean, there's just so much stuff that, you know, some things that may be assumed, some things that have changed, or some things that maybe in your church setting have changed. So even though you had it down pat or packed, whatever it is, even though you had it, you know, inside and outside, whatever, things change. And so there's new questions about copyright licenses. The one I got recently was, we have multiple copyright and streaming licenses. Can't we just show all of them at the end of worship to show that we're covered? You would think yes, but there's some things to consider. So at this church, they've got, I think it was like 5 different licenses, and some of them, like more than one, overlap for live stream coverage. But let's say we've got 3 songs, and the first one on this specific arrangement is covered with one license, and in a different arrangement, it's covered maybe in the other license. So perhaps you're basically, the official guidance that I received from CCLI is that you do have to show the specific copyright and streaming information for that song, for every single song, at the end of every single song. So one of the thoughts that I had was, maybe you could just have them all in one slide at the end, even if, you know, you're being specific for each song, just have them all at the end. And I thought this may also be helpful if you include it in the description, the video description for YouTube and Facebook. I've seen that in many different YouTube channels and whatnot. So I thought that was like, that's going to get you covered. And it turns out it wouldn't hurt to do those things. But what CCLI is saying specific, or that you have to do, is have the copyright information after every single song. The last slide needs to be that copyright and streaming information for each song. So that's the official, but a little bit more about why it is that way. Why can't you just put the blanket one? So I talked to David some about this via email, and so part of it is, imagine, I'm going to put it, well, basically only one company is going to be the company that's going to, wherever it is that you're reporting the usage of that song, that's the company that's committed to, okay, so then we'll pay the artist, we'll pay the company, we'll, you know, the writer, whatever it is, for the use of that song. The other company that also can cover it, maybe they both cover it, but you're not going to report it to both companies. If you do, I don't know what, I don't think that would be right, because you only need one company to cover it, and that one company is going to be financially responsible to pay for that. So that's one reason why it doesn't make sense to have all these different companies listed if you're not really having them be the financial obligation organization. Did that make sense? Do you have something else to share, David, about that?
I think you've got it just fine. It's a little surprising that CCLI doesn't have clarity out there about the how to designate the copyright information in live streams, because there's nothing, so they need to up their act a little bit. Live streaming has been a big thing for a whole year now, so it's time for them to make it clear, because it is clear. There is other information out there about what to do in church with printed materials or even slide displays in person worship, but it hasn't been clear that that was also an expectation for live streams. So that is good to know, and I think yes, it is a best practice to do whatever you can to get the, so like in our bulletins, in our we do digital bulletins, so PDFs, we put that this is being used, here's the copyright info, permission, and because of one license this or CCLI that. And so we do it with everyone, even when we're not printing words, we just have that there with each song. But not everybody has a PDF bulletin, and so it's whatever is unique to your situation. Like Christina says, you just have to narrow down that one company that even if you have multiple licenses that you're going to choose. And doing reporting is important too. It's easy to kind of push that off and say, okay, I'll do it later when I get to it, but that's an important part of the whole licensing interaction, is to be responsible to report, not just because I have a bunch of musician friends, but it's a good idea it's the right thing to do. So yeah, Christina, your knowledge about copyright and such is just really tip top, and I'm impressed by all that you have absorbed and then shared with the conference, and I appreciate being asked sometimes, but I don't always know either, as you know. So yeah, we know what we know.
Takes a village, right?
It does.
Thanks. All right, any questions about that? About copyright, streaming? All right. Then the other thing I want to share with you guys is I mentioned it in last week's, sorry, I was just reading the chat about the path to ordination. I will include information about that in the Tuesday Talks email after this streaming. So last week I mentioned the conference lay leader nomination, and I totally forgot to share the invitation video that our current conference lay leader, Lori Lineberry, had produced. And so I'm going to share that now. And then we can talk a little bit more about it. Oops. I forgot to do the share sound. Do that again. All right. There we go.
Hi, Lori Lineberry here. Guess what season it is? It is the season where we as laity get to choose our new lay leader. That happens every 4 years. Last year, because of COVID, I took an extra year. But this year, we need to find a new conference lay leader. So my experience is that other people will see your skill set and your talents before you do. You are a part of them and you use them, but you don't call them out. So I think that individuals have a hard time saying, hey, I think I'd be a great conference lay leader. So this is what I am asking you to do. I would like everyone, every lay person in the conference, to look around at their friends and look at the things that they do what they like to do, what they're good at, and discern whether you think they would be a good conference lay leader. And approach them and ask them about it. Details on the conference website coming up about what the next steps are, but I really would encourage everyone to start thinking about it. We don't have a whole lot of time left, and we need to find a great conference lay leader. I know you're out there. I know you're out there. So let's find a friend that we think would do a good job, and let's have a conversation with them.
Okay. Yikes. I can still hear sounds. Okay. Sorry about that. Jim, you got a question?
I happened to watch Lori's video early this morning, and it's a good idea. We have several people in my church that I think could be good conference lay leaders. What they didn't describe, though, was the time commitment for that. And I think that's the first question that I was asked by one person.
Perfect. Okay. So we do have an article. I'm going to share my screen again. That is going to be included in the, I thought I had it open already. It's going to be included in today's newsletter. So this one talks a little bit, I think somewhere in here. Perhaps it's in, I might need to add it here, but it's supposed to be every 4 years. So the time commit, if that's what you mean, like time frame, or like how many hours a day?
It's a day.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to touch base with Lori to find out. In the original write-up and last year's invitation to nominate someone, excuse me, or to consider if you would be a good conference lay leader, she did describe how many meetings you'd need to be a part of. And in her case, this was pre-COVID. So in her case, she was also including travel time. And so it was a huge thing because she lived in Yuma and most of the stuff happening was in Phoenix. Occasionally they have to travel, like maybe there's a gathering with all the bishops and conference lay leaders at Lake Junaluska, I think that's how to say it, or in Nashville or somewhere else. So there's also potentially a travel thing, but nowadays everybody's so comfortable with Zooming that travel might not be a big deal after all. But I will find out more about an average week or month or whatever, and make sure that it does state specifically that it's a 4-year commitment. In Lori Lineberry's case, it was a 5-year commitment. She was gracious enough to add 1 more year because we couldn't nominate anyone. It was just such a weird time with COVID, Other questions or thoughts about that? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, also just like, what is she required to do? What is she doing? What's part of the jobs that are required?
Yeah, okay, so that part is in the article. It tells you what the Book of Discipline says that the conference lay leader is supposed to do. And then there's a link. I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. So that first part is, according to the Book of Discipline, and then you can learn more. The General Board of Discipleship has a really good article about it, and that tells you a little bit more about what this position is supposed to do. I would say that one of the big deals about it is, let me stop sharing. It's kind of like, think about your lay leader at your church, what they do for the church. And so this is conference wide, and part of it is connecting the different lay leaders together. And perhaps it's a little bit of a path to spiritual formation, maybe, but it's not necessarily that the conference lay leader is the one that is writing sermons or creating Bible studies. It's not like that. It's different. I mean, if you think about your local lay leader, I'd say that's a little bit more about what they do. Carla, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to add when you were done, Christina, that you also, not only do you want to look at the discipline, but there's also some information in the journal, in the conference rules, that talk about what the responsibility is for the, not for the conference leader, what committees they serve on and things like that. And you can always check in the nominations report to see what committees Lori is currently on, because those would be the committees that a new lay leader would probably be on or have a representative. And they do, because they do chair the committee on lay leaders. No, what is it called? The lady committee, the committee of all the district lay leaders. I can't remember the name of it. I apologize.
Yeah, one of them is Board of Laity, I think it is. And then
that's what it is. It's the board.
Yeah, but there's another laity group. I just don't remember what it is. But similar to how your lay leader at your local church works closely with the pastor and maybe designing, here's what we're going to do this year, or checking in on how things are going. The conference lay leader works closely with the bishop, and the conference lay leader is responsible for whatever the program is going to be for annual conference laity session. And that doesn't mean that they have to be the keynote speaker, but they might receive recommendations from others saying, oh my gosh, you really should connect with David Topping because he has incredible insights for da-da-da, or I attended this conference and the speaker there was amazing. So the conference lay leader would have a budget to work with to connect with those different individuals and select which one would fit best for that year's annual conference. I can't remember the names of the people that Lori had in the past, but I know because I'm lady, I was there. They were always pretty good stuff. And oftentimes she would have maybe a theme for the laity session, maybe around learning how to pray, maybe about being better evangelists. I can't remember them all, but I hope that's giving you a little bit of an idea of what it is to be a conference lay leader. But I will add more information to that article. I'm planning on publishing today's newsletter at 3:00. So, and I think Lori works full time again. So I don't know for sure if I'll have something in there, but maybe with Lori and talking to the bishop and others that have worked with Lori, maybe I'll be able to add a little bit more about, and what does all this actually mean? What did Lori Lineberry do when she was the conference lay leader? How long, how many hours were invested, that sort of thing. Yeah, that is huge. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Also, do you have to be a lay leader or a lay servant? What are the requirements? Is that in the Book of Discipline? Are there requirements?
It's in the Book of Discipline.
Okay, just curious.
Cool. Thanks, Carla. I wasn't sure. I mean, I posted it there and I've read it, but I can't remember. Okay, any other questions about that? Okay, so the only other thing that I want to make sure that you guys come away with from this is, whoever you have in mind that you're thinking, maybe so-and-so, or maybe for myself, it isn't applicable if it's for yourself, but if you want to nominate someone else, before you fill out the nomination form, you can click it open and read through it and try the different options, because different questions pop up if it's a self-nomination or if you're nominating someone else. So, play around with the form, but before you actually fill it to nominate someone else, make sure that you talk to that person and have them read through this article, have them, maybe pray together on it. But you want to make sure that that person is open to that candidacy. we don't want to nominate people that, and everybody votes for them and turns out they didn't even want it. Like, I don't know, this is news to me. I never thought about it. Because then we miss out and we don't have someone in that spot. And we absolutely have to nominate someone this year. Okay.
Sounds good.
Oh, my husband said it sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I don't have anything else to share, but it's 10:31. We could stop now, or if anybody wants to share something, go ahead, Greg, and then Chris.
I have a quick question. My pastor asked the other day, are there any plans in the works for a conference provided July 4th service? Since that's first Sunday of the new appointment year, it's a holiday weekend. She just wanted to know if anything was in the works, and I said, I don't know, I'd have to check. So I thought this would probably be the perfect forum to ask that question.
That's a fantastic question. I haven't heard of anything in the works specifically for July 4th, but I will reach out and see if that's something that we can get going. Because one of the things, it doesn't mean that for sure we can do it, but I would say that because it was asked for by a church, chances are very good that the conference will have something lined up for that. So it's not a done deal, but I'll follow up and see what I can get going with that and keep you guys informed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chris.
I have two questions. The first one is, and I don't know if anybody knows, we are, with reopening, we're hoping to do bulletins online. So the idea is to have like a QR code at the entrance that you just scan the QR code and then your bulletin pops up. I've only done QR codes to websites. I haven't done them with PDFs before. And so I'm wondering if anybody knows if we can use the same, if there's a QR generator that'll let us use the same QR code every week and we just swap out the PDF within it, or if we'll just have to print out new pages with a new QR code for the PDF.
I have an idea for you.
Okay.
One possibility would be to have your PDF loaded on your website. And so, yes, the QR code can link to the website, that file, to download it. And if you aren't really specific with your file name, like let's say it's Chris Kroger's Bulletin is the name of the file, instead of May 4th, Chris Kroger's Bulletin, which would likely change next week. So just keep the file name the same and replace the file on your website so your QR code is always going to the latest version. You might want to test it before you launch it, but in theory, that should work. The part that I would be worried about is if a QR code would save the cache, or if it brings the individual to a previous version of that link. So that's the one downside. Anybody else have some thoughts about that?
That's exactly what I was going to
Okay.
come up with. And the caching problem is something you'd want to test. By the way, if you have a WordPress-based website, there's a cool free plugin that it's called Enable Media Replace. Enable Media Replace, because that allows you to do that kind of replacement of a document. And it has choices like, okay, update all the links, change the date and the time. And when you do that, then if you that way you can upload the new PDF right on top of the old one and maybe keep the link the same. So yeah, I think Christina's right on track and give that a shot. There probably would be other ways of trying to link to something that's persistent. Instead of the PDF itself, however, a workaround would be to create a placeholder page that actually has that week's PDF. That's not as direct, but at least, and it could have, here's this link. You could even give them some other information that might be useful. And that way they'd do the QR, they'd go to that page, click on that. And so 2 steps.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm looking forward to checking out that plugin. Yeah, that's cool. I will check that out. Thank you. My second question is, what has been the best, in your experience, what's been the best place to post job openings? Not for pastors, but I mean, obviously, but for,
Well, we do have a job, excuse me, like classifieds for jobs at local churches that are, you just need to send your write-up with the contact person to your district office, and then they'll post it on the conference website, and they add a category to it so that it's also included in their upcoming district newsletters. So ideally, it's going to go to church people in your area that might be able to, share it with their neighbor, kid, or whoever, or apply at your church. So that's one thing that we do. I don't know what anybody else does. Has anyone tried the Facebook job posts? I tried that once or twice, and it did generate some leads. But it was I felt like it was a little tricky. Number one, because it wasn't like getting an email, like where, you have to be on top of it. Like, oh yes, I posted a job on Facebook. I need to come on. And it seems a little less, it feels to me more likely for someone that's not really interested in the job, but someone that's just having fun and is going to mess around with you. It just seems like that's more likely going to happen on a job on Facebook versus a job posted on an actual job site or through your district newsletter. Yeah. So,
Okay.
Hope that's helpful. What I can do is reach out to the other directors of communications in the Western jurisdiction and ask them about, what do your churches do for job postings, and I'll report back.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other stuff? Great questions, Chris. Thank you. Okay, then we are 10:38. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Oh yeah, I gotta remember to include that path to ordination thing. And we'll see you guys next week, hopefully, 10 o'clock.